welcome and thank you for coming to the second Charity Law Accounting Regulation Conference. This session is on the future of charities and tax in New Zealand. It will run in the same format as the other sessions so far, with a short thesis statement from each of our 5 panelists, after which we will open up for discussions and questions from the floor. So, as Craig said, I'm Jamie Cattell. I'm the Senior Accountant at Charity Services. My role involves all things financial, including monitoring compliance by charities with the financial reporting standards. Given the limited time, and to allow for more questions and discussions with our panel at the end, I'll keep this brief. What I will say is that while we don't deal directly with tax, we are aware that any change in tax treatments or concessions that are offered to charities can affect the types of entities that we have on the register and the types of activities that they engage in. Today we have a fantastic panel of professionals to share with us their views on the current issues in the New Zealand tax environment for charities. So first we have Stuart Donaldson from Oonagh Breen, and he's going to provide us with a brief overview of some of the issues that are top of mind. Then we have from Artie Chan of Artie Chan Tax Law, in particular focusing on the business exemptions that apply to charities, business tax exemptions. Then we will hear from Mark Lash from Deloitte, who will provide an iwi and te Moe perspective on structuring and charity tax issues. After that, we will have Nick Bland from Simpson Grierson, who will provide his thoughts on the tax policy development process. And finally, we will have Professor Fiona Marston from the University of New South Wales, who will sum up and comment from an Australian perspective. So, if you will join me in welcoming our panel to the stage. With that, I will hand it over to Stuart Donaldson to kick off.
Have we got the slides in? Are they filing? Sure.
I can just talk. Did you see anything so exciting pictures?
Seems we're having some technical difficulties while they sort that out down the back.
Okay, I'll just quickly. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. So I've got about 7 minutes to talk about the future of tax and charities. What I'd like to cover is 5 things actually, just some broad context about government support for the charity sector through the tax system. Recent tax law changes, I think that's probably good context for thinking about the future as well. The tax working group recommendations, which is supposed to be thinking for the next 10 years and issues with tax and charities. Other matters that have come to our attention that could be considered by government in the future. And I'd like to focus on, end on Oonagh Breen's increasing customer focus and what that could mean for the future as well. So those are the things I'd like to cover. I'll just start with the broad context. Charities in New Zealand have received tax exemptions, I think, since the 1870s. And it's, I had a really nice picture of what Parliament are like. Oh, they are on? Okay, I'll show you. That's what Parliament like when we decided to have tax exemptions for charities. The government recognises that the charitable sector plays an important role in the New Zealand economy and society and contributes to the well-being of New Zealanders. As part of that recognition, registered charities are treated favourably in tax services. The support for charities in the tax legislation is targeted and it covers a range of areas. I've got those, I think the main ones, I think it's pretty much on the slide. So you're familiar with them. There's income tax exemption, which obviously translates to resident holding tax exemption as well. Of course, there are exceptions. If you are a charity and you have business income and you have overseas charitable purposes, you may end up paying tax on some of your income, so it's not a complete exemption. Donation concessions that we're familiar with for donor organisations, fringe benefit tax exemption for a subset of donor organisations, GST concessions for a much broader group than not-for-profits. And two lesser known concessions in the Act. Student loans, you get an interest-free concession if you're a student loan and you go overseas and you work for a charity, and that charity is listed on by unearned revenue. So student loan borrowers can receive concessions. And then an even lesser known concession is for working for families tax credits. If you're a recipient of working for families tax credits and you receive payments from a charity that's completely ignored, but if you receive a payment from anyone else, a non-registered charity, not-for-profit, or just another person, that's more than $5,000 a year, and that's taken into account and will reduce your working for families entitlement. So another advantage of being a registered charity, just thinking about beneficiaries. It is difficult to quantify the level of total support. I mean, we know there's about $300 million a year that goes towards donation tax concessions, donation tax credits and gift deductions. If you add income tax, GST and FBT, I think it's about $1 billion a year, roughly. So don't quite, but I think that's roughly what it could look like. We haven't really done this focus, it's quite hard to do. To put that in context, I think the government provides grants to the sector of about $6 to $7 billion a year. And obviously don't forget local government, they provide a number of concessions to charities as well. So within the total government tax is just part of the picture. When officials provided advice to the tax working group last year, we outlined a framework for the taxation of charities and not-for-profits in the future. Firstly, you need to decide whether the tax system should be even used at all to provide support for the sector, or whether there are other options such as direct grants that could be more appropriate. But secondly, if you do decide to use the tax system to provide support, you should ask 4 questions. Firstly, who should be eligible to receive the support? Secondly, to what extent should the support be provided? In other words, what's the acceptable fiscal cost? How much is the government prepared to spend or forego? 3, how should the tax support be targeted? Should it be targeted to income tax, GST, FBT? Should it be targeted to donation to donor support? Should it be targeted to New Zealand entities versus entities with purposes overseas? And lastly, linking into the previous topic, what alignment should exist between the timing of the tax support and the ultimate public benefit? So is the government prepared to provide tax concessions today, even though the public won't see any benefit for that in 10 or 20 years? There is general agreement from both the tax working group and past reviews that the government should regularly review the tax support it provides in the sector in case it should be changed to be more effective. So the future of charities and tax will depend, I think, on how future governments respond to those sorts of questions. Looking at recent changes, just the context of the future, based on our experience in the last 10 years, we can expect to see ongoing tax changes. Every year the government has at least one tax bill, sometimes 3 or 4, and there's always changes for charities in those bills. Usually it's because we add more overseas charities to Schedule 32 for donor status, but usually there's other changes as well. When changes are made, they're typically recommended jointly by Inland Revenue and Treasury. At the moment, policy officials from Inland Revenue, DIA, MB and Treasury actually meet once a month, so we know what each other's doing, and we take an informed approach to what we do. In the last year, I worked with the team at Inland Revenue on about 12 changes that went through in the June 18 bill, and they were passed in March this year. The main themes are shown on the slide. The first change, which we hope will result in more donations being made to charities, is simplifying the way donors can claim back their donation tax credits. So from 1st of April this year, they can just photograph or upload copies of their donation receipts as soon as they make the donations, and we'll refund the donation tax credit automatically at the end of the year in most cases. So that should make things a lot easier. That idea actually came from our public consultation in 2017 about how to simplify the tax system. About half of the other changes were focused on improving integrity of the current rules within our existing policy settings. So for example, making sure all organisations with donor status are published on their donor list. The other half reduced compliance costs for small charities. So for example, we introduced a $10,000 de minimis threshold for the deregistration tax. And I think it will take out about 60% of registered charities from that tax. A number of suggestions for these changes actually comes from the sector itself, through writing to the Minister, writing to policy officials, or raising these suggestions at Select Committee. For example, most of those deregistration tax changes actually were suggested and submissions to the Select Committee in the previous year. For complex deregistration changes, we actually used a targeted consultation and put up 12 key key industry advisors to their views before we put those changes through. So in summary, we do have a dynamic environment with charity tax law. It's typically made up of small changes within the current policy settings, and many of which of those are suggested by the sector. But occasionally there are wider, more significant changes to policy settings with this consultation. I don't know if I need to go through this, I'm sort of running out of time. Tax working group recommendations, I think we all know what's in there. The group focused on 4 areas for charities. What I would say is that the officials have told the Minister that we will report to him on what we recommend in respect to those 4 areas after the charities modernisation review is complete. So we won't be reporting to the Minister on those 4 things until later this year. Just 2 more slides. This one is just thinking about other things that have come to our attention from time to time, and maybe they're not new to you. Imputation credit refundability is often raised as a change that could be made for the sector. As you know, it's not, imputation credits aren't refundable in New Zealand. The rise in social enterprises have come up. Should tax concessions be extended to entities where there is an element of private benefit? Are there other tax issues that we need to consider that would affect social enterprises, such as donating trading stock? At the moment, if you donate trading stock, you can't claim a tax deduction for that trading stock. In fact, you have to return it as market value when you return. Charitable purposes. When the charity regulator decides the purpose is not charitable, should the government still, in certain circumstances, provide tax exemptions, as we did for community housing a couple of years ago? General tax concessions. When will and won't general tax concessions be extended to charities? For example, the R&D refundable tax credits being considered at the moment. Donation tax concessions, how can we change those to make them more effective? And not-for-profits generally, and usually when I present to not-for-profits who aren't tax exempt, I'll raise 2 issues. $1,000 deduction, are you going to increase that? And I usually say, well, better be careful, or we might just get rid of it completely. More seriously, mutuality, and should not-for-profits pay tax on transactions between members or not? And can revenue provide better guidance in that area? So I just want to end with the point about inland revenue and how we engage with the sector. So I think the future of tax and charities is not just about law, it's about how we do engage with the sector and how the sector engages with us. We know there are opportunities for inland revenue to improve in this area. About a year ago, inland revenue, our structure changed and to reflect a stronger customer focus. And not-for-profits are explicitly part of our structure now. We've made some immediate small steps, so you might notice we have a news site for not-for-profits that we keep up to date. We're actually using social media, and last week was the first time we tweeted on Facebook and LinkedIn news about charities, so you can expect that in the future. Over the next month, a research team is interviewing a range of not-for-profits, as well as surveying not-for-profits about their experiences with inland revenue. So if you get chosen, we really appreciate you looking into that and responding. Even if you don't, we're interested in reviews, and you can see I've put on this slide. If you want to email us at charities.queries@iod.government.nz, by end of May, put charity insights in the subject line. Tell us what's working well with inland revenue for your charity, and what could inland revenue improve, either operationally or through revenue and revenue from the charity. So we are actually going to have a look on the not-for-profit sector and charities in the future. I'm happy, of course, for that feedback to be anonymous if you prefer. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing my fellow presenters.
Thank you for that, Stuart.
I think that was a really good summary of the issues, and I know that a lot of the things that you touched on are going to come up later in this panel and later in the conference. I'll now invite R.C. Chan to come and give her views.
Thank you, Jamie, and good afternoon to all of you. What I I'm going to cover very briefly today is the business income tax concession. Specifically, I'll touch on how the provision stands at the moment, then we'll look at who's using it, we'll look at some of the changes that are coming through, and then the future, because we're talking about the future of charities and tax, we'll look at the future of this concession. Is this useful, effective, and is it really relevant? Let's start with the provision itself. At a very, very simplistic level, if you have a registered tax charity and it wants to conduct business through a separate entity, it can set one up. That's great. If that trading entity has a charitable purpose, then it can benefit from the income tax exemption. What that means is that the trading entity does not have to be a charity at the moment, but it will still not have to pay income tax, which is really great. Now, that leads us to the question, who's actually using it? Well, all of us who work with charities or for charities know that the biggest issue all charities face is funding. We have our primary sources of funding, government, donors, so forth. But a lot of charities are looking to become more self-sufficient or having some degree of self-sufficiency when it comes to funding. By having a business, conducting business, you do generate funding which you can manage and control. The income tax concession allows you to set something this up relatively simply and manage it for the purposes of your organisation. Now, there are other reasons for this. There might be charities who want to provide goods and services at a different rate and conduct business to be able to facilitate all of those types of things. The tax working group, their stats say that 30% of charities have some sort of trading arm, which is unsurprising. In my experience, I've seen a lot of charities investing in commercial property, residential property, and of course retirement villages, but then that's just a snapshot of the types of activities that charities are getting into. One of the issues that has been identified and has now been really fixed is transparency. So you have the main charity, that's a registered charity, but its trading entity to get this income tax exemption does not have to be a charity. So it's not regulated in the same way as a charity, it does not have reporting requirements, and that was seen to be a bit of a gap. We don't really just want to focus on the charity, we also want to make sure that the underlying trading entities are operating in the way that they should. So what we now have is a new section, a new amendment to section CW42, which says that the trading entity itself needs to be registered as a charity. That will come in from the 1st of April 2020, and that will mean that the landscape changes a little bit. Now, in terms of other issues, the tax working group received a lot of submissions from people who were against this income tax concession. And the reason for that being that they felt that giving this income tax concession to charities operating businesses gave those businesses an unfair competitive advantage, and we don't want that. Now, we might be able to get over that hurdle and say, well, okay, numerically, do we really have a commercial advantage here? Maybe, but how significant is it? And at the end of the day, if all of those profits are going to the charity, where's the fire? Why are we getting so excited? Now, the other issue, which to me seems to be more of an issue, is this issue around accumulation of those profits. So if the trading entity itself is accumulating its profits, and there isn't sort of a systematic distribution of those profits to the ultimate charity, then is the charity utilizing those profits? And are we concerned that there is this accumulation? Now, there might be legitimate reasons for it. So it might be because you want to purchase a capital asset, so you want to retain those profits. Or it might be that you want to reinvest those profits because you want to develop a bit of a nest egg. Regardless of your motivations, we will see some debate and discussion around whether there should be some more restrictions placed on this income tax concession, which maybe requires a distribution of profits at every 12 months, or providing some information as to why those distributions aren't happening. Now, what is the future? Well, we are going to see a lot of international jurisdictions have started to work towards the basis that we will have an income tax concession for businesses that operate for charities, but what sort of businesses should they be operating? Are we okay with charities operating any type of business, or do we want to again restrict that and say, well, we want you to operate businesses that are related to your charitable purposes, and if you do that, we will give you an income tax exemption. But if you fall outside of it, you won't. An example would be, for instance, if you have a charity that provides counselling for parents, and that's what it does, but then it decides to generate funds, we're going to put our counsellors out into the wider marketplace and get them to provide those services at arm's length cost. Now, that's a separate business, great. If we make money from it, then it's related to the primary purpose that our charity has, so we should have an income tax exemption. Now, what happens if, for instance, that same organisation is lucky enough to have enough resources to invest in commercial property? Let's just say that they are able to. If they do that and start operating that as a business going on to that, if it's not related to the core type of services that they're providing, should they still get the income tax exemption? Or should that fall out and you get taxed as a normal business because it's moved away from what you were trying to do? I would expect New Zealand to start having those discussions, and I would see that this income tax concession becoming more and more restricted in terms of its use. And my personal opinion, we're probably going to see this section not being used very often. It's just going to probably become a little bit redundant. Anyway, on that sort of slightly doom and gloom note, I'm going to wrap this up and pass this on to the next panelist. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, na mihi ki koutou, tēnā koutou ki koutou ki tau mai nei, ki te tautoko te kaupapa o tēnei wā. Ko mātais toku inua, mō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Ash, I'm a partner at Deloitte. It's my pleasure to lead the Māori sector tax practice for Deloitte. That sees me working with all of our Deloitte clients across the country, and in particular all of our Māori clients. Whether that's with Maitahu, my iwi in the far south, all the way through to some of the Tahu in the far north. I'm going to just talk very briefly. I always find it interesting when you get a panel of 5 tax advisors and you give them 7 minutes to talk about their topic of choice. To get us to stay within 7 minutes is going to be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm probably not going to touch on everything I'd like to share with you today in relation to the Māori sector, and in particular the interaction with the charities law. And tax in particular, but I'll try and give you a little bit of a flavour of some of the issues that are there. I just wanted to start by, can you just quick show of hands, how many people in the room work with Māori organisations and charities? Yeah, okay, so quite a few of you. So what I put up on the screen, I thought it was useful rather than sort of jumping right to the future to just take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about the current state. As you will appreciate, every Māori organisation will have a slightly different structure, so this is just really illustrative. But there's probably some common themes in amongst it. So I appreciate that the words are really small. If I'd known that you were sitting way at the back, I probably would have made them slightly bigger. So I'll just talk through them as we go. So at the very top, and most importantly, we have our iwi. That is the whole purpose or the reason for why these organisations exist. What typically sits underneath it, represented by the dark blue box, is what we call our post-settlement governance entity. That is the entity that the Crown has agreed has got the mandate to settle with the Crown in relation to the iwi's claim. And that is where ultimately the assets, the rights and the obligations initially first pass. That post-settlement governance entity takes on the role of governance for the group, generally speaking looking after setting the strategic direction for the group and ensuring that the group delivers the outcomes that are important to the people. As you look at it, on the bottom left-hand side, in the lighter blue colour, we've got an asset holding company and we've got a charitable investment trust. That asset holding company is not a charity, but I will touch on a little bit further on my presentation around how and why we have that in our structures. Typically, the light blue area of that diagram, their focus is to grow the putia, the assets that have been received from the Crown for the purposes of providing a commercial return. And that can often comprise a mixture of both taxable entities and charities. On the bottom right, as you look at it in the green circle, is our iwi Development Trust. The role and function of that particular charitable entity is for it to deliver the charitable outcomes and the charitable purposes to the iwi. I thought I'd just show you a little bit about how the funding works in the structure. Again, apologies for the fact that it's actually quite small, but if you think about at the bottom level of the structure as you look at it, those effectively are our commercial entities that are generating financial returns. So as you look at it on the left-hand side, we have taxable subsidiaries, we have limited partnerships represented by the triangles, and those are feeding up revenues all the way up to the dark blue box in the middle, which is our asset holding company, which we talked about before, and also the round circle in the middle, which is sort of the green colour, that's our charitable investment trust. Again, thinking back to the previous slide, the focus of those two entities is really around generating financial return. What happens is the financial returns are generally passed up to the parent entity if it's sitting in the taxable side, so you can see there's a big arrow on the left-hand side of the structure making its way up to the top. That's our distribution of taxable Māori Authority distributions and Māori Authority tax credits. In the middle, we have our charitable investment trust that is generating tax-free earnings, particularly often from the businesses that it's conducting, and that will be distributing, as you look at it, from the centre out to the right-hand side to the iwi Development Trust on a charity-to-charity basis. And from there, the iwi Development Trust distributes up to iwi. So within the structure, we actually have two levers to pull. When we're wanting to deliver benefits to our iwi, we can either deliver them through our charitable side, which is through the iwi Development Trust, or alternatively, taxable distributions, which can come up through the parent entity. So what are some of the perspectives in relation to the structures that Māori organisations use in tax and charities in particular? Ostensibly at its heart, the post-settlement government entities that settle with the Crown are ostensibly charitable. They exist for the purposes of people, tikanga and environment. But the Crown won't settle into a charitable entity, so they are forced to adopt a particular Crown model around settlement. And that is that the parent entity must be a taxable entity. These organisations exist for the people. If you read the constitutional documents of post-settlement government entities, you will see very clearly that it's all about ensuring the health and well-being of the people, the health and well-being of Māori culture, and the health and well-being of the environments with which those iwi groups reside. The separation of entities that I've illustrated in the structure is really just about providing the opportunity for there to be good or different governance structures that are placed over the top of those activities. For example, the post-settlement government entity is often a politically motivated entity. It is a popularity contest as to whether or not you get appointed onto its governance board. However, we know that if we're wanting to manage commercial assets or we're wanting to develop great programs to deliver to the needs of our people, sometimes we need different skill sets. Hence why we have subsidiary structures to allow that governance to occur. Because the purposes of these entities is all around delivering to the people, the tikanga environment, Māori organisations have a deep understanding of what the needs are and what is necessary in their particular area to make a difference. So if we start to look at things that might challenge that, things like the taxation of business income and maybe a clawing back of some of that stuff, there's a real risk, I think, that if we start to pull back on some of those exemptions, we start to deplete the resources that are available to the organisations that best know where those resources need to be delivered. I don't think any Māori organisation would prescribe to a view that the Crown would be in a better position to deliver outcomes to its people than what they are. Certainly the Crown's record in that regard is not fantastic. A couple of areas where I think there are some opportunities to actually positively enhance outcomes. We talked a little bit about the fundability of imputation credits. That is has a considerable impact in relation to the way in which Māori organisations operate. I touched before on the fact that we have this taxable asset holding company in our structure that's a Māori authority. The reason we keep that in our structure is because Māori authority credits are refundable credits. So I can route income, which will have a non-refundable imputation credit, through that structure and turn it into a refundable credit. So if we're applying our funds for a charitable purpose, we effectively get our imputation credits back in that mechanism. But there's a cost of doing so. There's a compliance cost of having those structures in order for those outcomes to be achieved. So if we were to remove the fundability of the impediment around fundability of imputation credits, we would remove some of the distortions that we have around specific investments being targeted by charities, or the need for specific structures to get around them. I just want to touch finally on our last couple of things. The one is around the distribution or retention tax. Māori organisations have an intergenerational view around their asset base, and the previous presenters were talking about an intergenerational perspective. The charitable sector could learn a hell of a lot from the way in which Māori organisations look at their asset bases and they look at how they're going to provide for today's generation and the many generations that are to come. I'd be really concerned if we were proposing to introduce a form of tax on business income if it wasn't distributed, if it didn't have in mind the fact that Māori organisations have that long-term view. It's about restoring the pūtea, restoring the asset bases that they don't presently have, but also at the same time providing an opportunity to go to deliver to the needs of today and the future generations as well. Any steps in those areas would need to have those in mind. Finally, I did want to just sort of talk a little bit about charities compliance and where I see the future, and that is we have, in a Māori context at least, quite a number of Māori organisations that are adopting structures that are similar to what I've just illustrated, and it's really important, fundamental to them that they maintain their charitable tax status. So some of the work that we've been doing with some of our Māori organisations is around assisting them to review their processes, to ensure that their processes are robust, to ensure that they understand the activities that they're carrying out, that those activities are charitable, and that we're keeping them safe, because the risk of the deregistration tax is just too high, and in a lot of instances the cost of them is significant. Anyway, that's about all I can cover in the. It's already read, it's been read for about a minute, so I'm going to skip, and I'll be around over the afternoon tea if anybody wants to have a little chat. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mark. I'll now invite Oonagh Breen to come and speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nick Breen, some reason we've very tactically left out our logo on the previous slide, so we get a plug just after lunch. Brilliant thinking. I'll try and take you through this pretty quickly and give Fiona time to speak to you. I really want to hear her speak to her Australian perspective. But I thought I'd use my soapbox to talk about getting the process right and give you a slightly different perspective from Stuart on the past 10 years or so. Because I think there are things we can do over the next 10 years to improve tax policy development in relation to charities. And I think it's really important for the members of this audience, lawyers, accountants, charities, academics, DIA officials and the like. I think you're all critical to improving the process. So I just want to touch on some problems with the process, and I'll just touch on these, as I say, reflections about the past 10 or so years. I'll just touch on them very, very briefly first, and then give some examples. Firstly, I think there's an issue about what's the default mindset in this area. In particular, I felt on the part of some officials, and the default mindset seems to be a degree of antipathy towards the charitable sector. So the focus is on charity taxation issues as integrity matters, and as a consequence, the focus tends to be on the clawback or tightening of tax concessions. That's what seems to be prioritised. I'll give some examples of this shortly. Secondly, in terms of the way that some policy changes, the ICS should be dealt with as policy matters, the way in which they're pushed through I think has been a little controversial. And there I have in mind some of the reinterpretation to certain aspects of the tax legislation that's happened today, and some of the more recent remedial legislative changes that have come through and haven't garnered the attention they should have had from the charitable sector in terms of pushing back and getting it right. Thirdly, I think there's an issue about the Charities Act versus charity taxation. In the end, the Charities Act is tax legislation, or at least a large part of it is. It's tax legislation. It's regulating your access to tax concessions in terms of income tax exemption at the moment, and going forward in relation to tax incentives. And I think there's a bit of a lack of clarity in relation to that feature of the Charities Act registration regime and the role of DIA and IRD in relation to policy development impacting on charity taxation. And then just in terms of the charitable sector, obviously there's a lack of capacity and resources to deal with this stuff. To some extent, individual charities don't want to put their heads above the parapet. They just don't have the time, apart from delivering on their charitable works, to get heavily involved in policy stuff. I think there is a lack of awareness or engagement on the part of the sector to a degree. And I think that flows through to a lack of representation and submissions on important matters. Just in terms of some examples, just thinking about the tax working group and what happened there. You've got a tax working group process that looks at the New Zealand tax system, how to get it right going forward. In terms of charity taxation, 100% focus on effectively integrity issues, tightening things up, clawing things back. It's not surprising because I appreciate that the officials report, or secretariat report that went to the working group covered broadly how the tax system supports the charitable sector. But what did it focus on? What did it say to focus on? A couple of integrity issues. And I think that reflects that mindset that I mentioned earlier around what gets focused on at the moment. It's the negative and not the positive. I think it's also notable with the tax working group that there are lots of individual submissions. I run out of time already. My countdown is showing 0. Oh, I've got all the time in the world. Excellent. So just to take an example, and we've already heard this mentioned a couple of times, but will it actually get looked at seriously? 10 or so years ago, streaming and refundability of imputation credit. That was put forward as a positive measure, as we mentioned a few times already, to support the charitable sector. It's wholly consistent with Parliament's position on exempting charities. Why wasn't that part of, for example, the tax working group's agenda for charity taxation going forward? Just thinking about the way in which, as I say, things that I think should have been dealt with as policy matters have ended up being dealt with as reinterpretation of legislation, and then have been dealt with by way of so-called remedial and legislative changes. There have been a lot of developments over the past 10 years around donation tax incentives. I think there's been a fairly aggressive approach on the part of Inland Revenue in terms of what is a gift that qualifies for a donation tax credit or deduction. And it's an aggressive approach that has cast to one side a long-standing position in relation to the same types of payments qualifying for tax credits in the past. So again, I think that reflects this mindset that I talked about. Also in the donation tax incentive space, the approach to donee organisation status and the issue of organisations applying their funds wholly or mainly to charitable qualifying purposes within New Zealand. That was dealt with as a reinterpretation of the wholly or mainly requirement, with IRD casting aside the more than 50% that had been accepted for many, many years, and indeed was the basis on which the rewritten terms of the legislative provisions passed, and came up with, at least initially, mainly means more than 90%. That can scale back in terms of the final position that's been reached. It's a tolerable position that's been reached. But that should have been dealt with, I think, as a policy matter, not pushed through as a sort of interpretation matter. In terms of the latest legislation that's pushed through, I've had Stuart on about this a few times. The changes that Stuart talked about in the recent legislation were all described as remedial changes, tucked away in the back of the commentary. They didn't get much attention, there weren't many submissions. We tried. The Law Society's Tax Committee tried, but they didn't receive a lot of attention because of that description of those remedial changes. And they were quite important changes. IRD, statutory provision for IRD pre-approval of donor organisation status, without any clarification around things like timing issues or other issues. It's equivalent to a Charities Act registration process, but without a full act to deal with it. You've got a broadly worded anti-avoidance provision around donation tax credit claims now. We've pulled that back a little bit, but the original drafting was the type of drafting that IRDs only got away with in relation to certain types of tax credit claims. It's as if they knew that the charitable sector wasn't going to be sufficiently engaged, or wouldn't be sufficiently engaged to push back on that. And you've got interest and penalty provisions applying to incorrect donation tax credit claims. All those things bundled into some sort of remedial changes in the latest tax legislation. And I think those things, standing back, looking at all those developments in that area, this should have been dealt with as a policy matter. There could have been a discussion document around these issues, and then much better legislation, if legislation was required, around donation tax incentives. And then I come to the Charities Act review itself and its tax implications. It seems a bit artificial when registration is required for tax purposes to access tax concessions that you de-link the review from those tax concessions. For example, if we're going to be reviewing the business income tax exemption and its scope, doesn't that feed into what sort of registration and ongoing compliance requirements you have under the Charities Act? If accumulations are linked to, or concerns about accumulations are linked to the use of business income tax exemption, why is that all being muddled into the Charities Act review rather than having a wider review that encompasses the tax policy? And I think there are probably other examples I could give as well, but those are the ones that came to mind. So then, thoughts on can we improve the process? I think individually and institutionally, I think there can be a change of mindset. So in terms of looking at charity taxation policy now over the next 10 or so years, I think there can be a change of mindset. And I think that, as I say, that starts with us in this room, and other individuals involved in the sector, and spread out the organisation. But for officials in particular, and my challenge to Stuart and his colleagues is to think about a change of mindset. And that means accepting that, as Parliament has over many years, that tax concessions to charities deliver public benefit. And that charity taxation for the future is not just about clawing back or tightening existing concessions. It can and should also be about enhancing and extending concessions where appropriate. And we've heard some examples mentioned already. I've jotted down imputation credit refundability, and you'll have noted that Mark mentioned that minority authority credits are refundable. Why not the same position? Why isn't the same position seriously looked at? The wider charitable sector. Facilitating or encouraging social enterprise, if tax changes could do that. Incentivising appropriate non-monetary donations, not just gifts and money. But I think also when you're looking at sort of clawing back or tightening existing concessions, having a balanced approach to that as well. So in terms of the competitive advantage that tax-exempt charitable businesses have. They also have disadvantages in terms of attracting equity funding to develop their businesses. It's not it's all advantage, no disadvantage. There are other factors that need to be taken into account when reviewing that exemption. And there are also just compliance and complexity issues. you start looking at unrelated businesses or a different approach to business and unrelated business income, you've got to draw lines between passive and business income, between related and unrelated businesses. And that's another factor to be taken into account in terms of complicating the law through further changes. Improving IRD's approach. I think some of the issues I talked about earlier could be improved through care and management and using the generic tax policy process that we have whenever possible. Recognising that charity taxation interplay that I mentioned earlier, being transparent about it. And I think also giving the sector better or additional avenues to be heard on Charities Act and charity taxation matters. Now, I certainly applaud what Stuart mentioned earlier about using communication channels now to be more communicative with the sector, to provide opportunities, as he mentioned, for feedback. But I think there are other things that can be done. Would the charitable sector be helped by a formalised, officially recognised advisory board or formalised, officially recognised sector user group arrangements that gave the sector a better voice? From a lawyer's perspective, is the Law Society's Tax Law Committee enough? It does what it can to contribute to policy development in the area, but some things do fall through the gaps. I know that the Charities Act review itself has been bandied about between committees, not knowing quite where it falls. We don't have a charity not-for-profit committee specifically looking at those things and what CANs do in that space as well. And of course, from the sector's perspective, are there newer or improved sector-led options? Are there things that the sector can do to band together, with not necessarily as a sector as a whole? You've got different perspectives on charity tax policy development, but perhaps appropriate parts of the sector can do better with sector-led options for influencing positive charity taxation policy development. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we are significantly over time. So I'm going to invite Professor Fiona Marston to come and speak, and I don't imagine we've got much time left for questions after that, but I'm sure that our speakers will be more than happy to talk to you in the afternoon.
Hello everybody, and thank you so much to the organisers and to everyone here for being so patient and waiting to hear all about tax and charities, which I know is the highlight of the day, and also the highlight of the conference, because who would want to talk about tax? I just think it's fascinating. Okay, so as you can see, I'm from the University of New South Wales, and I'm from the School of Tax and Business Law. So my background is as a tax academic, but I'm very much interested in how tax interacts and intersects with the charity sector. And my background is interesting in that, well, I think it's interesting. I'm not, of course, sorry. I'm so excited about myself. I think, well, my background is that I got involved in this area through my colleague and esteemed colleague Miles McGregor-Lowndes many, many years ago, last century, when dinosaurs walked the earth, and we introduced a GST into Australia. We just had the 20th anniversary of our GST. I know we're a little behind. We're one of the last of the OECD countries to introduce the GST. But that was the very first time that charities in Australia had to interact with the tax system, other than just get endorsed files, not registered, yes, good. Endorsed with the tax office, and that was it. They didn't lodge tax returns. There was nothing else, okay? So GST really brought them into the fold, if you like, and it's been a huge learning curve ever since. And when you think about it, in that 20 years' time, we now have an ACNC. It's pretty amazing, really. So I just thought I like to do a little bit of a demographic when I talk about things, and I've only got 2 slides, so it's okay. I promise. So I just thought it was interesting to look at Australia and New Zealand, and also in terms of our population. I mean, we've got 25 million, and we're very big, you know, geographically, and you've got 5 million people, and you're quite small geographically, but very important. And a very nice place to visit. Thank you. I'd like to come back, you can tell. And the number of charities is interesting, and I'm not saying there are too many charities or not enough in either country, because I do think it's a very much, as we've heard before, very contextual. Okay. But I think it's just interesting to see how many charities are in both countries. The staff employed is interesting, isn't it? In Australia, you can see I think we've got about 12 million employed people, or the equivalent of full-time employees, so 10% is a lot of people. That's universities and not-for-profit hospitals and aged care centres and all sorts of places. You've got 180,000 full-time and part-time staff employed by the charity sector. Main charitable purposes, both the same, except one was more, in Australia we're more religious, you would have thought, and you're more educationally focused. Well, there you go, you see, you're smarter. Appreciate us educators. And very, very similar too, in that there's a lot of small charities in both countries. This is really interesting, I think, and food for thought for further discussion about what the needs of this sector are and what the compliance costs should be and what the regulation should be. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And then I just wanted to look at the income tax exemption, and more particularly the taxation of business tax, because I think that's a major issue and something that's vexed countries all around the world. We have this concept where this income tax exemption of the charities is some huge subsidy. Everyone's been talking about that today. It's a subsidy. Well, I disagree, and many tax researchers disagree that the income tax exemption is a subsidy. Let's face it, what would these organisations be doing if they had to pay tax? I mean, who would pay tax for a start? Like the charity? But why? When it's doing all this public good. What about its beneficiaries? Most of the beneficiaries for a large number of charities anyway would be on the poverty line, so they're not taxable anyway, or they might be receiving benefits and services, not actually income. So it just seems to me, and for many other reasons as well, that it's not a subsidy. And in Australia, we don't quantify this amount of tax expenditure. In our Treasury expenditure statements, we don't say that the income tax exemption costs us any amount of money, because it's not quantifiable and it's not really relevant. Okay? We do for donations. That is actually quantified in our Treasury statements. Every year it's around $3 billion, because they can see that. They can say, okay, well, you gave $300 and your average tax rate was 25%, so the tax revenue has subsidised by X kind of thing. The maths at the moment, but you know what I mean. So that's a completely different system, and they're sort of segregated in Australia. The income tax exemption is very much charitable status, but the donee status is very different. I'm going to go into that today. But let's have a look at a few things that my colleagues very cleverly said, which I think were wonderful. I loved every presentation. He talked about 30% of charities here having a trading arm. Now, I'm sure that it's very similar in Australia. We don't talk so much about trading arms, but there are some charities that by their very nature provide services or goods that get income in. So you think about universities that charge fees, not-for-profit schools that charge fees, hospitals that charge fees. They're all charities. By their very nature, organisations that need to raise money because donations are not as high as they used to be. They're not coping with inflation or the increased demands of expenditure. Government grants aren't either, and they're very limited and restricted government grants. So these organisations need to go out and earn money in some way. And there seems to be a sort of a mindset which we've seem to have overcome in Australia, and I'm not saying we're a gold standard by any means, but we seem to have overcome this mindset that there's something wrong with charities actually earning money. We seem to think, as the High Court said in Word Investments, well, they can't all just be out there doing Lamington drives. It's just not going to cut it. So why not let them carry on a business? I know we've got this idea about competitive neutrality. The Productivity Commission in 2010 in Australia said that was just nonsense. I have to tell you, I'm sorry to tell you, this is from an economist's point of view. I couldn't work that out because I'm not an economist. But basically, unless the charity is out there undercutting its market traders, its marketplace, they're not getting any benefit. Sanitarium doesn't charge any less for their cereal than Kellogg's, and I don't see Kellogg's going out of business. So it's the same sort of principle. Am I at the end of my time? I am? Oh yes, okay, it's working this time. All right, well then I think there's some other countries and what they do, including New Zealand. I haven't caught up with, I know the trading subsidiary thing is there, and I agree with what Artie said. I think it's just a waste of space, but anyway, she's quite sad about it, but I can, I'm not from here. The US has, where's the US? Yes, US. Unloaded business income is taxable. It's a nightmare of a tax. It costs a lot of money to administer, to comply with. It collects no revenue, and it's just a burden. So don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. I'm sure that mentioning Wellington has got people thinking now about afternoon tea, which I'm pretty sure we're getting into. So please just all join me in thanking our